How's it going, people? Welcome back to another video. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. I've never really done. It's gonna be another one of them recording sessions, isn't it? How's it going, people? Welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to do a talkie style video. I'm calling it a talkie style video because I don't really know what else to call it, to be honest with you. But I've been thinking for a while now, and I wanted to just mix up the content on the channel a little bit, just so it's not the same thing all the time, because the process for me gets really repetitive, and I'm sure it gets repetitive for the people watching as well. So, you know, doing this kind of thing, it allows people to see a different side of me a little bit, you know, and it kind of opens you up to some other things that I like to do other than sitting down and playing horror games. Because believe it or not, I do like to do other things. I like to read. I like to go outside and breathe fresh air. And I feel like in the world that we're living in today, it is incredibly important to do these things because we're just so infatuated by screens these days. And I feel like we are forgetting about those simple little things that can have a massive benefit for our mental health. So I'm just basically kind of wanted to share as well from that perspective how much reading has helped me out, because I think I really got into reading in a dark place in my life. I was in a really bad place. I was in a really in a really strong fit of depression, and reading was something that really kind of provided some sort of relief for me. It's a great mental exercise. I mean, if you're reading nonfiction, you can take on board a lot of knowledge, but even if you're reading a fictional story, you can still increase your vocabulary, expand your mind, broaden your horizons, take on board new information. It's even though you could still consider that a distraction because you're letting something take your mind away somewhere else, I feel like it's a far healthier distraction than just sitting there scrolling through whatever your social media of choice is. And I'm not saying that you're a bad person if you scroll through social media. I mean, we're all guilty of it, right? But I just know for a fact whenever I have done it in the past, I really don't do it very often. I've never really been a big social media person anyway, but whenever I have done it, I've always come away from it feeling like crap, feeling depressed and really downtrodden, and, you know, like there's no hope for the world. that's just what it does for me every time. I've never really, I mean, I know that there are some good things that you can get from social media, but I feel like there's a whole lot of negative and very little positive, you know? But anyway, the purpose of this video was not for me to sit here and rant about social media. It was just for me to share some of my favorite books with other book lovers out there. The first couple I'm going to talk about, I think, are the more generic, and then we'll probably slip into the less generic ones as we go along. And there's one book in particular that I'm pretty sure 99.9% of people will not have heard of. But if you have heard of it, let me know, because I'll be interested to know if you have. All right, intro rant over. Let's take a look at these books. Okay, so the first book I've got to show you is George Orwell's 1984. So speaking about the cover, I mean, this is the Penguin Modern Classics edition, and it's got a portrait on here from Francis Bacon, who is a famous artist. I don't actually know why, if there's any specific reason why they chose this particular portrait by him to go on the cover of this book. I don't know if it's just, if there's any kind of correlation with the story. I can't really think of one off the top of my head, or if they just do it because it makes the book eye-catching. I'm guessing that is the reason, is because it just makes it kind of jump off the shelf at you. I'll give you a little closer look. I mean, to be fair, yeah, I mean, if you did see that on the shelf, it does kind of make you want to walk up to it, doesn't it? So you can kind of see why they've done that. But if anybody ever says to me, you know, have you got any books you can recommend me? If they haven't read 1984, it's always the first book I will say that they have to read. I mean, for so many reasons, but I mean, it's an incredible story. It's beautifully told. It's got some of the best world building in any book ever. It's got some great characterization. It's got some characters in there that you really root for and want what's best for. There is one big caveat with this book that I will always warn people about, because whenever anybody says to me, you know, like, what's it like? Every time I will just say the same thing. It's one of the most depressing books that you will ever read, but it's also one of the most brilliant. And when I say that, it's basically, it's just, it won't give you the ending that you're hoping for. You know, when we're reading a story full of trials and tribulations, we're all waiting for that moment where they get to that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. No, doesn't doesn't happen in this book, unfortunately. However, having said that, I don't necessarily think a story always has to have a happy ending. You know, like, sure, it's great when it ends on fluffy clouds and sunshine and rainbows, but I think particularly with a book like this, it feels so much more genuine and authentic and also impactful when it doesn't end the way you want it to. Like, it will hit you a lot harder and it will stay with you a lot longer if it doesn't end in that typical generic way where everything works out in the end and everyone's all happy and smiley and hooray, we beat the bad guys, good for us, woohoo. Because the way that George Orwell chose to end this book is probably, I think, a large part. I mean, there's so many other aspects to it as well, but it's one of the biggest reasons why it has stuck with me, because that ending will just hit you like a sledgehammer. Also, one of the other big aspects of this book is unfortunately how close we can relate it to our everyday reality right now, and it seems to only be becoming closer and closer to the kind of thing that you read in this book out there in the world today. And this book was published in 1949, so it really is kind of like, it does make you think, how did this man know it was going to end up this way? Like, what did he just have a very incredibly progressive mindset, or did he have a crystal ball somewhere that he was staring into? Because he really did hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways. And it's a book that just really has the ability and the power to change your perception on the reality in front of you. So yeah, that is why one of the many reasons why I love this book so much and always recommend it to people. Right, let's search. So I do that cringy thing where we go, okay, let's take a look at the next book, guys. That's the only time we're going to do that this video, I promise. So the next book, as you can see, is Ernest Cline's Ready Player One. This book, I think you can probably relate this book a lot to 1984 in the way that it is quite dystopian in nature. It does have some kind of omnipotent force that's trying to take over something that they call the Oasis, which is like the gaming universe within the world of the book. So yeah, it has got like a hint of 1984 in there, but it's also, with this book, it is just a really fun time. It's a great adventure story. A lot of people say like, oh, you'll appreciate it more if you're a gamer, and I do agree. To be honest with you, you probably will like it a lot more and will be able to relate to it a lot more if you are a gamer, but that doesn't mean you can't if you're not. Like, if you're not a gamer, it doesn't mean that you can't appreciate this book and love it for the story that it is. It was a pretty weird moment for me with this book where I became truly hooked, because it was quite early on in the story when Wade, the main character, is talking about his love of laundry rooms and how he finds them so comforting, and that's something that I could directly relate to. Like, there's something about them for me as well. I don't know if it's like the hum of the machines and the smell of the fabric softener. I just felt like a laundry room or a laundrette, just very kind of comforting places to be, the perfect place to kind of just sit and mull things over and be with your thoughts. So I had that relation to the main character. So immediately I was like, oh, this guy's a legend. He loves laundry rooms. And I was totally invested from that point on. The only downside I've heard about Ready Player One is that the sequel, Ready Player Two, isn't anywhere near as good. I haven't read it. I've stayed well away from it because everything I've heard about it just doesn't sound good to me. So, you know, I've just stayed clear of it, and I'm just letting this book be my only memory of the universe and the characters. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to play it safe and say that there is no second book, because I just don't want to ruin it for myself. Because every review that I read, it was just people saying it's not as good as the first one, it kills the first book. So, you know, unfortunately, it is one of them situations where the sequel kind of kills it a little bit. I think the biggest thing that surprised me about this one is for how much I enjoyed it for how little dialogue there is. Honestly, when you compare narration to dialogue, it's probably about 80-20 in favor of narration. There isn't a lot of dialogue in this book. And I'm the kind of reader where I do love reading some good dialogue between the characters. I guess it's like the actor in me. I want to picture the characters in my mind, and I want to do their voices and all that kind of thing. It's just something about reading that I really enjoy. This book is mainly narration, and yet somehow it just manages to keep you hooked on the main character, Wade. His prose, you just want to keep reading, and you just want to keep hearing about this story, this adventure that he's telling you about, and you need to know how it ends. You need to know how it all works out. And this is a dystopian story that does end on a more positive note as well, so it's got that going for it as well. So if you're the kind of person that's likes a bit of dystopian fiction, but doesn't want it to end on a sad note, then there you go, Ready Player One. Okay, book number 3 is The Rum Diary by Hunter S. Thompson. And it's kind of weird because the book that I read prior to reading this was Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the other really popular book by the same author. But I didn't love that one. It was a little bit too all over the place with me. I couldn't picture it very clearly in my mind's eye. It was very rambly. There wasn't really much of a story structure. And I get that that's kind of the point because it's, you know, basically the drug-fueled ramblings of a madman. So it's kind of the point. But I don't know, it's just one of them where I've read it and I just kind of had to write it off by saying, you know, it just wasn't for me. This book, on the other hand, hit me like it was written by a completely different author. It's just, I think the thing that I loved the most about this was the prose of the main character, Paul Kemp. He is a writer that goes to work at a crumpled newspaper in Puerto Rico in the 60s. There's something about the words that are just really alluring and they pull you in. The descriptions are really clear. You can get a real vivid image of the story in your mind. It's funny, it's witty, it's got some great banter between the characters. And it's the kind of story that doesn't really aim anywhere. It just kind of, it takes you on a little journey and then eventually it just drops you off at the end. But you don't even care because you've had a great time just reading about the man's life and his experience as a writer in the Caribbean. And I think as well, it's one of them stories that's just got a perfectly rounded anchor of emotions. And that's something else in a story that I look for, that I gravitate towards, ones that just kind of hit every note on the emotional spectrum. And this is definitely one of those. It's definitely encompasses every sort of emotion you can think of. And it's not even that long. It's only a couple of 100 pages long. But I think what you experience through Paul Kemp in those couple of 100 pages is something that will definitely stick with you, in my opinion. Okay, book number 4 is Blow My Tears, The Policeman Said by Philip K. Dick. Now, Philip K. Dick is one of my favorite authors. He is the man who got me hooked well and truly on the literary world, and I'll be forever grateful to him for that. I read one of his stories called The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldridge, which is a great little sci-fi story. And I also read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the book that the film Blade Runner was based on. The book is infinitely better than the film, and I'm prepared to fight anyone who disagrees. But yes, so you know, this guy is an author who means a lot to me. I've read, he's probably the author I've read the most of as well. And even though he's one of my favorite authors, I've still read a lot of books from him where I did not love them at all. But he has got those select few books that are just ingrained in my memory, and this is one of them. So I'll just like give you a little closer look just so you can actually see. I know there's not really much to see, but just like the title and what have you. So this book is kind of basically like Black Mirror long before there was it was even a thing, because this book came out in 1974, I think. But it is about a man called Jason Taverner, who is a global famous TV personality. Everybody around the world knows his name. They know who he is. And then one day he wakes up and all of a sudden finds himself in this dystopian police state, and no one has heard of him. No one knows who he is. His identity has completely disappeared. So as you can see, it's real. It's got that kind of Black Mirror tone to it. I think one of the reasons I love this book so much is because if you're familiar with Philip K. Dick, you'll know that his stories, he's known for writing very weird, strange, psychological type sci-fi. And this is a great example of that. And I'm a big psychological fiction fan. I like psychological horror. I like anything psychological, anything mind-bending, anything that kind of pushes the boundaries of reality. I love that kind of thing. And this is just, it's a great adventure. It's weird, it's strange, it's, you know, and it's a gripping bit of sci-fi. And it's also something, it was kind of the first instance I had as well, where it kind of blends a little bit of poetry into its fiction as well, which I thought was nice, and is actually one of the elements of the book that really stuck with me. So there's that element to it as well. But it's not even just this book in particular. I recommend this. I recommend The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldridge and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. They're all really, really cool stories from Philip K. Dick. But he is, just a very weird and strange sci-fi writer. I think he is the kind of writer that, everybody should check out. at least once, just to kind of get a feel for the, you know, I feel like he's one of them. He's a bit Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. But he definitely has his stories that I really love, and this is one of those that has really stuck with me. Book number 5. I've actually been waiting to show this book off for a long time, so now is my moment. The moment has arrived. It is Edgar Allan Poe Illustrated Tales, and it is easily the sexiest book I own. I mean, I personally think that the cover art in this is just absolutely gorgeous. It's got some beautiful silver foiling going on with it. I'll give you a little close-up just so you can get a better look. And it's, you know, it's just got a real kind of gothic, macabre sort of vibe going on with it. Really just says Edgar Allan Poe. Really, it's just raw sex appeal in book format is what it is. And it's illustrated tales. So it's got, let me just see if I can give you a quick example of something in here. So yeah, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but it's got like these tapestry-esque portraits in there that basically just sum up the story that you're reading. And it's also got some other little bits and bobs, you know, like these kind of trippy little styles. So they kind of mix up the art style as well, which I like as well. So it's not all just one art style. There's a bit of variation going on in there. There's also some colored ones in there too. But yeah, just really beautiful artwork in this book. So I mean, for that reason alone, it's one of my favorite books. It's absolutely gorgeous. But Edgar Allan Poe, I mean, I'm a big horror fan. If you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that I play loads of horror games on here all the time. But I also love to read horror. And Edgar Allan Poe he's not the one of the first horror writers, but he's definitely known for being one of the men that steered the genre into the modern world as we know it today. My first encounter with Edgar Allan Poe was in English class. I think I must have been about 13, 14 at the time. And we read The Telltale Heart. And I remember that it was a story that really stuck in my mind because I'd never really, up to that point in my life, I'd never read any horror literature at all. So that was my first introduction to horror in literature format. And I think that, you know, you can't really get a better introduction to horror than Edgar Allan Poe. And years later, years went by, and I thought back to that story because it stuck with me all those years. And then I remembered, obviously, the name Edgar Allan Poe, and I bought this book and I started reading through all of the other stories in it. One of my favorites is actually one of the first ones in the book. It's called Message Found in a Bottle. But he is definitely, he's one of them writers that's kind of, his stories are really open to interpretation, which I love. You can kind of take from them what you want and leave what you don't. You know, you can see them from many different perspectives. You can summarize them in many different ways. And these stories are a vibe. You know, they really are. They're you know, very old English as well. So they're good for kind of increasing vocabulary because you're going to be reading his stories, and you know, there's going to be a few words in there where you're like, what? Because it's very kind of old school English in the way that they're written. But at the same time, they're just the dark, malignant, macabre vibe that they give off is just something that everybody that loves horror should experience at some point. So if you are a horror fan, this one, definitely, totally recommend it. And if you can get your hands on this version in particular, I mean, like I said, it's a sexy book. It's going to look great on the bookshelf. Okay, here we are, book number 6, the final book. This is the book I was talking about that I'm sure that 99.9% of people will not have heard of. Okay, so let me start by saying that it is a massive step down from every book I've shown you up to this point. But just know that there is a method to the madness, because this book in particular comes with a little story time. So let me set the scene. I am 13 years old. I'm in Switzerland and I'm on a school ski trip and I get ill. So I am stuck in the chalet on my own, bored out of my mind. I'm lying in my room, feeling like crap. And like I said, when I was younger, I didn't read much. I only really read when I had to for school. But on this particular ski trip, where I was ill, I had nothing else to do. And downstairs in the dining area, at the end of the dining area, there was this little chill zone and they had this wall of books. So I went downstairs and I'm thinking, you know, I'm going to pick one of these books to read. I need something just to, to get me through the day here, because I'm just, all I'm doing is literally just lying in bed staring at the ceiling. So I'm feeling like crap, and I'm just looking at the shelves, and I see a book, I see the spine of a book, and I just grab it. I don't even think about looking at the cover. I just want to take it and get it upstairs and start reading it. For some reason, I just assumed all the books I was looking at were just like fictional tales. But the book I ended up picking off of the off of the shelf was Raving Fans: A Revolutionary Approach to Customer Service. That's right. Of all the books on that bookshelf, this was the book that I picked. I know. Talk about shit luck. The weirdest thing was that I still read it anyway, because I was that bored, stupid, and I just couldn't be bothered to go back downstairs. But I opened it up, and I actually, at 13 years old, I started reading a book about a revolutionary approach to customer service while I was ill on a ski trip in the middle of Switzerland. But I think the only reason I was able to actually read this entire book from cover to cover is that it imparts its wisdom of customer service onto you in the form of a fictional tale about a crumbling manager who is randomly visited by a male fairy godmother. And the fairy godmother has got like a thing for golf. He loves golf, and he turns up in this manager's office, and he's like, "Look, mate, just everything's going to be all right. Just stick with me. I'm going to take you on this little journey, and I'm going to teach you the do's and don'ts of customer service, and you're going to save your business." And 13-year-old Ryan got invested in this story. He wanted to know if the manager was going to make it. He wanted to know if the male fairy godmother was going to was going to help this man and help him keep his job. So I read it from cover to cover, and I made it to the end, and it was a happy ending. He did, in fact, actually help the man save his business. Spoiler alert there. I'm so sorry. I know you must have been absolutely dying to read this book. I'm so sorry to ruin the ending for you. And you might be thinking, Ryan, I still don't get it. Why is that one of your favorite books? The reason is pretty simple. Is because this was the first time, ironically, that I ever really properly got something out of reading. It was the first time I was able to read a book and my mind was transported somewhere else, and it served as an amazing distraction to me, and it really, really helped me when I was in a really bad way. I mean, you can imagine, especially from a 13-year-old's perspective, when you're abroad and you're sick and you haven't got your family around to look after you, you're obviously feeling really down and sad. And this book, believe it or not, it helped. It helped me. And the craziest thing of all as well is I've got a small business today. I work with dogs. I walk, board, train dogs. So I actually use the teachings of this book today in my everyday life. So it's kind of crazy how it ended up coming full circle. I mean, I don't know if you believe in fate. I don't believe that everything happens for a reason personally, but I do believe that there are certain milestones in our life that we are supposed to experience to help us grow and evolve as people. That's just my belief. And honestly, I do believe I was meant to pick up this book. I do. So that is why it is one of my favorite books, and always will be, just because it was the first little inkling that I got for reading. It was the first time I was able to think to myself, oh, actually, I could see myself getting into reading, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's done, like I said, later on in life when I was in a really bad way, I started picking books up again, and once again they really, really helped out somebody that was struggling. And that's kind of like my point in making this video, is the power that a book can have over a person and what it can do for you. It can help you in your darkest moment, at your darkest point. It can teach you things. It can expand your mind, which is why I think at this day and age, especially, it's a really important skill and value to instill into the younger generation, and why I'm such a huge advocate for it these days, because, I know firsthand what it's done for me and my journey. That's it. Those are 6 of my favorite books. If you're still with me and you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you giving me the time of day. And like I said, I'd like to do some more stuff like this in the future. So if you liked it, then please do let me know in the comments, and let me know some of your favorite books as well, because I'm always looking for recommendations. I hope I was able to tickle your fancy with some of the books that I've talked about, if you haven't read any of the ones that I was talking about anyway. And I mean, you haven't read that customer service one. Come on, it's a belter. You're going to love it. If you've enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, because it really helps me out, and subscribe if you'd like to stay tuned for future uploads. I've been Ryan. Take care. Peace out. See you next time. Bye for now.